Yeah, they exceeded very high expectations. Their growth accelerated from more than 60% to more than 70%. There's no other software company even close. If you look at software companies 2 through 10, they're happy to grow somewhere between 20 and 30%, and they're usually decelerating. So what Palantir is doing is remarkable. We're running out of superlatives. It's remarkable, and it exceeds very high expectations that came in, which is what is implied by the valuation. That's why the valuation is so high on Palantir, is because there's no other company like it.
Yeah, I mean, the company said we are an N of one. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The more work we do, and we cover 40 something other software
Yeah.
companies, there's nobody that's even close to what Palantir can do. It's a very unique combination of skills. They have absolute ownership of their customers' data in terms of the ability to organize it in a useful way. They have an army of 4 deployed engineers that help companies solve problems. They have direct relationships with CEOs. They have a strong mission and sense of purpose. There's no other software company like it. And the reason that's important is that they are actually solving problems for their customers. All these companies for the last 3 years have been trying to figure out, what can I do with AI? How can AI make my business better? And most have not really made much of a difference, apart from Palantir's customers that said, Palantir, hey, I'll hand you the keys and about $40 million a year, and you help me make my mission critical systems better with AI. And they're getting results. That's why they keep growing the business, especially the commercial business, at an increasingly fast rate. So it sounds arrogant to say you're an N of one, but they're delivering behind that promise.
Got to give them props on some level. But having said that, I mean, one of the things that investors have been concerned about is that more than half of their revenues, you talk about the customer base, more than half of their revenues comes from the government. And some might say that's overexposure. How do you see it?
Yeah, but that won't be for long, right? The commercial business is growing so much faster than the government. Mind you, the US government business just grew 66% year over year. It's just that the commercial grew a lot faster than that. So within a few quarters, the commercial business will be bigger than the government business in a good way, because it's doubling every year now, and the government business is growing, quote unquote, just 66%.
Just 66%. Can you explain some more of, like, just translate for us a little bit? We were talking with Romain earlier, and you know, typically I would go to a press release to try to get information, but I don't understand what Alex Karp is saying here. He's the co-founder and CEO of Palantir. He says, quote, Palantir's Rule of 40 score is now an incredible 127%. What does that mean?
Oh, he's adding revenue growth with operating margin. And if you think about most companies, the term Rule of 40 was coined as the trade-off between revenue growth and profitability. And most software companies hover somewhere around that. If they're growing 10%, they have 30% profitability, that's 40. If they're growing 30% and have 10% operating margins, that's 40. So that's the yardstick that the industry has created for itself. And this is the yardstick that Dr. Karp likes to measure, because it shows how much farther ahead the Palantir is ahead of any software company. Again, the second highest company is probably half their rate. So
wow.
They are growing faster than any software company, at a higher margin than any software company. They are more profitable than even the largest software companies, Microsoft, Adobe, Oracle, Salesforce. They're more profitable than those companies, and they're growing 3 or 4 times faster than those companies. So I think that's what Dr. Karp enjoys pointing out to everybody else.
Is this one quarter, or is there enough there that says to you that commercial revenue growing 137% year over year, that is something that's a significant shift and something that we can assume will continue, or that's what's got to be grilled, you know, with the C-suite on the call?
Well, we think it'll continue, but realistically speaking, we thought 20% would continue, and then 30%, and then 40, and then 50, and then 60. And here we are, they're growing 70%. So we think that, we'd expect that to continue, but it may actually even be higher next quarter. Again, this is when you deliver results at the level they deliver to their customers, customer acquisition becomes a no-brainer, because one CEO and CFO tell another CEO, CFO, you know what, we just handed the keys to Palantir and they made our business better. And that seems to be working really well right now. So it looks like they should be able to grow at least that fast for the rest of the year.
Is there political risk long term with this company? This was seen last year as part of the Trump trade, and certainly the DNA of this company shares elements with this Trump administration. Certain people moving back and forth, certain people in power, certainly, and no question that this administration supports the work that Palantir is doing. What happens when or if this administration changes?
That is a risk, because to your point, there's an ideological alignment. I would say that it's probably not about personalities, because the personalities have changed a lot year to date in terms of who's involved in the administration. Mr. Musk is out of the administration, for instance. But the company, again, I talked about a very clear mission. They believe their mission is to help defend Western civilization. That resonates very well. That's very ideologically aligned with this administration. But to your point, we may have a different president 3 years from now who may have different ideology and may see Palantir as linked to this administration. And that would be a risk 3 years from now if there was to be a change in the U.S. government.
Hey, listen, one of the things, and forgive me, I'm going to spring this on you. You are head of technology research, so forgive me if this isn't, one of the companies that you cover, but I'm sure you have some thoughts.
He's a software guy.
He is. We did get a story that broke across the Bloomberg that Elon does plan to merge SpaceX with xAI. That's according to people familiar with the matter. And this has been, kind of hovering around, I feel like, late last week, and then, of course, this morning. So I'm just curious. It's a deal that could encompass Elon's ambitions to dominate AI and space exploration. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I have a lot of thoughts on it. So we always looked at it as Elon Inc. Elon has different commercial entities right now, but a really unified set of principles and goals that he is pursuing. And at some points, it made more sense for him for Tesla to be public and for other companies not to be public. The capital demands of the xAI business are very substantial. Let's not forget, he needs to build data centers as fast as Google and Meta and Amazon and Microsoft are doing, and he doesn't have the cash flow that those companies have. So he needs more capital. SpaceX right now is a much better situation to raise capital. So is Tesla. I would think of the end game as having one Elon Inc. So xAI and SpaceX merging would actually lay the groundwork for him to merge that into Tesla as well. Because again, the goals are the same goals. We want to send Optimus robots to Mars so our Neuralinks can control them and we can do the searches on Grok. That's Elon's plan. Right now, it's several commercial entities, but long term, he has the one vision.
Yeah.
And it makes more sense for him to just fold that into one entity, the entity that can get him the capital to pursue those opportunities. Which
really kind of fits into a conversation we had with Ross Gerber earlier. He had put out something on of Gerber Kawasaki owns these companies, the private Elon entities as well as the public. But he said X was out of money.
He just said this on X, by the way.
Yeah, he said this on X, and he said
we should note
X was out of money, merged with xAI. xAI was out of money, merged with SpaceX. SpaceX out of money, merged with Tesla. When they're all out of money, and then it's like ... But it's interesting how you say that SpaceX, we constantly talk about the value in this company, right? And Tesla, increasingly, everyone's saying, well, the value will be in the future, whether it's robotics or autonomous driving and autonomous systems, if you will. And so how you're saying Tesla's where the value, SpaceX is the value, so you can raise money off of it and then eventually fold it all into that Elon Inc. That's what this is, in your view.
That's what it looks like to us. Again, for him, commercial entities are just a way to get to the goal, and he'll keep them as separate as long as that's the best way to pursue the goals. But right now, SpaceX is the most valuable property in the sense that there's nobody that does what they do, and there isn't going to be anybody that does what they do for decades. So that creates a tremendous amount of economic value that he can raise capital with. And on the Tesla side, the stock is still very well priced, considering, again, the car business. You just talked about this earlier. The car business is a declining business.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're done with that business. Now we're doing self-driving and we're doing robots. And again, it's the same thing. All this information that he's capturing through self-driving won't just make a great business, will also help Optimus robots function in the world, because they'll have those billions and billions of hours of video to analyze in order to help those robots function in the real world. So again, a business where he's at least multiple years ahead of anybody else, at least in the West, at least outside of China. So there's a capability to raise capital there. He's just going to go where he can raise capital to stay competitive in AI. Because again, that still feeds into Optimus robot functioning in the world, because the Optimus robot will need the best AI model in order to do that. It's all one thing to him.